Karen complained about overwatering, then got fined for cutting water supply. The sprinkler hissed like a snake, spraying a fine mist over the emerald lawn of 23 Maple Street. But Karen Miller's scowl could have curdled milk. Wasteful, she spat, her voice slicing through the quiet morning like a lawnmower through grass. She stood on her porch, arms folded, glaring at the offending sprinkler as if it had personally insulted her ancestors. Karen, a 62-year-old retiree with a penchant for neighborhood watch meetings and a clipboard always at the ready, had made it her mission to police Maple Street's every blade of grass. Her latest crusade, the overwatering epidemic, as she called it, targeting her neighbor, Ethan Carter, a 29-year-old graphic designer who'd moved in 6 months ago. Ethan's lawn, lush and vibrant, was an affront to Karen's sensibilities. She'd spent weeks documenting his sprinkler schedules, snapping photos at dawn, and muttering about water bills and environmental irresponsibility. Today, she'd had enough. "Ethan," she bellowed, storming across the street, her flip-flops slapping the pavement. Ethan, bleary-eyed and clutching a coffee mug, poked his head out the door. "Your sprinkler's been on for 40 minutes. Do you want to drown us all?" Her voice carried the weight of a judge's gavel, and neighbors peeked through curtains, sensing another Karen spectacle brewing. Ethan sighed, rubbing his temples. "Karen, it's on a timer. It's fine. The lawn needs it." He was used to her complaints, first about his dogs barking, then his gaudy porch lights. But this water obsession was new. "It's not even a drought year," he added, trying to keep his tone civil. "Not a drought year, yet." "You millennials think you can just waste resources," Karen's face reddened, her finger jabbing the air. "I'm reporting this to the HOA. You're violating Code 17.2 excessive water usage." She whipped out her phone, snapping a photo of the sprinkler like it was evidence in a murder trial. Ethan shook his head and shut the door, muttering, "Good luck with that." But Karen wasn't one to bluff. She marched to the HOA meeting that evening, armed with a PowerPoint presentation titled "The Water Waste Crisis of Maple Street." The room, packed with weary neighbors, groaned as she clicked through slides of Ethan's lawn, complete with timestamps and water volume estimates she'd calculated using a bucket and a stopwatch. "This is a community issue," she declared. "We need action." The HOA president, Clara Nguyen, a patient woman in her 50s who dealt with Karen's tirades before, pinched the bridge of her nose. "Karen, we'll look into it, but water usage is within Ethan's rights unless he's exceeding the city's limits." Karen huffed, unsatisfied, and left the meeting vowing to take matters into her own hands. Over the next week, the tension on Maple Street thickened like humidity before a storm. Karen's complaints escalated. She left notes on Ethan's doorstep. "Turn off your sprinkler or face consequences." She cornered neighbors at mailboxes, rallying them to her cause, though most just nodded politely and scurried away. Ethan, meanwhile, kept his sprinkler running. Partly out of necessity, his lawn was his pride, a small oasis in his stressful life, and partly to spite Karen. The neighborhood watched, waiting for the inevitable explosion. Then came the twist. Mrs. Dolores Ramirez, an 80-year-old widow who lived next to Ethan, entered the fray. Dolores, usually quiet and unassuming, had been Karen's friend for years, sharing coffee and gossip on their porches. But even Dolores was growing tired of Karen's relentless crusades. One morning, as Karen ranted about Ethan's water crimes, Dolores interrupted, her voice soft but firm. "Karen, you're making this personal? Ethan's a good kid. His lawn brings joy to the street. Why can't you let it go?" Karen froze, betrayed. "Dolores, you're siding with him. After all I've done for this neighborhood," her voice cracked, not with sadness, but with indignation. Dolores shook her head and walked away, leaving Karen seething. The betrayal stung, but it only fueled Karen's resolve. If the HOA wouldn't act, and her allies were turning, she'd handle it herself. Late one night, under the cover of darkness, Karen crept into Ethan's yard with a pair of bolt cutters. She'd done her research. Ethan's sprinkler system was connected to a main water valve near the property line. With a grunt, she snipped the pipe, the metal screeching faintly as water pressure dropped to a trickle. She smirked, imagining Ethan's confusion when his precious lawn withered. "That'll teach him," she muttered, slipping back to her house. The next morning, chaos erupted. Ethan woke to find his lawn dry, his sprinkler silent, and a small flood pooling near the street where the cut pipe leaked. He stormed outside, tracing the damage to the severed valve. "What the hell?" he shouted, drawing neighbors from their homes. Clara, the HOA president, arrived, her face grim as she inspected the sabotage. "This is deliberate," she said, her voice low, "and illegal." Words spread like wildfire. By noon, a crowd had gathered, whispering and pointing. Karen watched from her porch, feigning innocence, but her smug expression betrayed her. Ethan, now livid, marched toward her. "You did this, didn't you?" he demanded, holding up a piece of the cut pipe. "You couldn't just let it go." Karen crossed her arms. Unfazed. "Prove it, kid. Maybe your shoddy system just broke." Her tone dripped with condescension, but the crowd wasn't buying it. Murmurs of disapproval rippled through the neighbors. Dolores, standing nearby, shook her head. "Karen, this is too far," she said quietly, her words carrying the weight of a lifelong friendship crumbling. The confrontation reached its peak when a city utility worker arrived. Summoned by Clara, he surveyed the damage, his face darkening. "This isn't just vandalism," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Cutting a water line is a serious offense. Whoever did this is looking at a hefty fine, maybe even criminal charges." He pointed to the pooling water, now flooding the street and seeping into nearby yards. "This is disrupting the whole block's supply." Karen's smugness faltered. "Fine," she stammered. "I was protecting the neighborhood. He was wasting water." But her defense fell flat. The crowd's murmurs turned to outright scorn. A neighbor shouted, "You flooded my garden." "Karen," another added, "my kids can't even wash their hands now." The consequences of her actions were undeniable. Her crusade to save water had left half the street without it. Clara stepped forward, holding a notice from the city. "Karen, the utility company traced the damage to your property line. They have security footage from a neighbor's camera." She held up a grainy still of Karen with the bolt cutters. "Caught red-handed." The crowd gasped. Karen's face drained of color, her clipboard clattering to the ground. I didn't mean..." She started, but Clara cut her off. "You'll be fined $2,500 for the repairs and disruption, and the HOA is considering further action." Ethan, still fuming, added, "You didn't just ruin my lawn. Karen, you screwed over everyone here." He gestured to the flooded street, the wilted plants in neighboring yards, the frustrated faces of their neighbors. Karen stood frozen, the weight of her actions crashing down. She'd wanted to be the hero, the guardian of Maple Street's resources, but instead, she'd become the villain. Dolores approached, her eyes sad but resolute. "You need to make this right. Karen," she said, "not for Ethan, but for all of us." The days that followed were a bitter pill for Karen. She paid the fine, her savings depleted, and faced a formal HOA reprimand. Neighbors stopped waving, their trust shattered. Ethan's lawn recovered, thanks to a community fundraiser organized by Dolores, who'd rallied the street to help him replace the damaged system. Karen, once the self-appointed queen of Maple Street, became a cautionary tale, her name whispered with a mix of pity and disdain. As the sprinklers hummed again, Ethan stood on his porch, watching the mist settle over his lawn. Clara joined him, handing him a coffee. "Think she'll learn?" she asked. Ethan shrugged. "Doubt it. But at least the street's a little quieter now." What do you think? Was Karen's crusade justified? Or did her obsession go too far? Share your thoughts. Should she have been punished more? Or was the fine enough? Let's hear your take on justice in this water war.